Hello everyone, today I'm going to be going through some effective exam techniques that you can use when presented with an exam question. So let's move over and start to look at an exam question. So this is an example question that you might get in an exam. I've just taken this from a chemistry GCSE paper that you can find online, and there's links to that in the Google Classroom. So, if we look at this question, I'm going to get your highlighter out first of all. So, the electronic structure of the atoms of 5 elements are shown in the figure below. The letters are not the symbols of the elements. Choose the elements to answer the question. Each element can be used once, more than once, or not at all. Use the periodic table to help you. Now this is really important, this last line, because it's the question telling you what to do. So if you ever get a question that says use this, or consider doing this, or you could mention, that's basically the question trying to tell you that explicitly or implicitly to use a certain thing. So this first question, A, which element is hydrogen? We know it said use the periodic table to help you. So we're going to single out elements that aren't relevant in this case. So we know it's going to be in period 1 and that it's going to be in group 1. Because that is our element hydrogen. You can see that on your periodic table. So instantly we know that it's going to have one outer shell. So it can't be A, can't be D, can't be E, and can't be C. That only leaves element B. Thus it must be element B. Which element is a halogen? So question B. So we know that a halogen is group 7. So that means that it has 7 electrons in the outer shell. So it can't be A, can't be B, can't be C, it can't be E, so it must be D. So we're going to cross D. So even if you know nothing about any of the other ones, you can still make an informed guess, looking at things that the exam has given you. If we highlight our next question, C, which element is a metal in the same group as element A? So if we look at element A, you can see there's 1 electron in the outer shell, and there's also 1 electron on the outer shell in E. Now, it won't be B, because we've already established that B is hydrogen, and hydrogen doesn't follow the same rules. So in this case, it's going to be element E. That was a really terrible cross, let's try that again. And finally, which element exists as single atoms? Now this is our last question, really, of these multiple choice questions. And what you'll notice about exam papers is that the questions get harder the more you go through. So you can see that this question is harder than these previous questions because it requires some additional knowledge. It requires you to know what elements exist as single atoms. Now the rule always is that group 0 always exists as single atoms as a general rule. So we're looking for group 0, which is going to be element C, because this element has a full outer shell. So it's element C. Okay, so now that we've done some multiple choice questions and I've run through exactly what you would do to answer some multiple choice questions based on what the question is telling you, our next question asks us, there are 2 isotopes of element A. Information about the two isotopes is shown in the table below. So you're going to need this table. The exam will never give you any information that isn't necessary unless it's part of the question. So in a maths exam, you might be asked to find the area of a shape and then be given 2 measurements for height. That's testing your ability to distinguish between the two. Unless the exam is doing that, everything that it gives you is going to be important. It says, use the information in the table. Use the information in the table. That's an instruction. That's important. Above, to calculate the relative atomic mass of element A. So what are we trying to find? We're trying to find the relative atomic mass. And it's asking us to calculate it. So calculate is our command word. And it said give your answer to 2 decimal places. That's a hint that the answer isn't going to be a nice round number. So if you do get a nice round number and they've said give your answer to 2 decimal places, then you need to think about what you've written as your answer, because chances are that's going to be wrong. Now, I'm not going to show you how to show you what the answer to this question is, because you can work that out for yourself based on what I've just said. This whole video is to explain exam technique. I'm not going to give you the answers because for any more questions, because that would really ruin it if you want to do this paper for yourself. The Sun is mainly made of hydrogen and helium. The diagram shows an atom of hydrogen and an atom of helium. Look at the diagram. If it's providing you with a diagram, then it's important. In this case, the diagram provides loads of information which you do need to answer the question. So, draw a ring around the correct answer to complete each sentence. That's important. Pay attention to it. It doesn't say highlight the answer. It doesn't say put a tick next to the correct answer. It doesn't mean cross the correct answer. It says draw a ring around the correct answer. If you don't draw a ring around the correct answer, or it's unclear, say for instance you did this, then you will not get the mark. So, the centre of each atom is called V. You've got 3 options there. So in multiple choice questions, even if you don't know the answer, select an answer. So even if I didn't know it was called the nucleus, I could make an assumption, a guess maybe. So in this question you could say, well, when we're talking about atoms, we know that it's, what we normally say it's nuclear. So maybe that links it to the nucleus. The circle labelled R, around the centre of each atom is called a bond, an electrical charge, or an energy level or shell. I'll leave you to answer that question on your own. Use the diagrams to part A to help you answer these questions. So it said, use the diagrams to part A. In some questions, if you don't use what they're asking you to use, you will not get the answer correct. I've had maths exams before now where it's specifically said, use your answer to a previous question. And you can still work out the question without using your answer to a previous question and just using the diagram that they've provided. But you won't always get the mark if your answer is incorrect, because your workings will not line up with what they have on the answer sheet. So, draw one line, asking for one line. So, once again, if you go like this and go, well, one of them's going to be correct, that won't work. They're asking for one line and one line only. From each question to its correct answer. So, that's telling you implicitly that there is only one answer for each question. There isn't multiple answers. Now, once again, even if you don't know this, you can make an assumption, you can make an assumed guess. but never ever guess unless you completely have nothing to go on for the question. So even if there's an inkling in the back of your mind about maybe what the answer is, use that inkling. If there's absolutely nothing else, don't just guess. So once again, we have information in this next question. That's important. You won't be able to answer the question without that information. The Sun is 73% hydrogen and 25% helium. The rest is other elements. What percentage of other elements in the Sun? So we've got it said the rest is other elements. That's a piece of information that it's given us. So if you do maths, you'll be able to calculate that very easily. One of the other elements in the Sun is neon. Neon is in the same group as helium. It wouldn't tell you that unless it wasn't important. Use the chemistry datasheet. It said use it, you must use it. How many protons are there in a neon atom? And what group of the periodic table are helium and neon in? So when you get a question like this, you need to evaluate what it's asking you. It's saying how many protons in neon. It's asking which group are helium and neon in. So you need to answer the question correctly, even if you think without reading the rest of the question, oh yeah, how many protons? You could maybe assume that it was neon, but equally it could be helium. You don't know. Always make sure to read all of the question before answering it, and if you didn't understand all of the question, make sure to go back and reread it. There's no point in writing an answer if you don't know if it's the right one. Again, use the datasheet to help you. Use the datasheet. When sodium reacts with water, it forms sodium ions. Diagrams below represent the electron arrangement in some atoms and ions. Once again, we've got wonderful diagrams. Those are going to be useful. It said what the diagrams are. This is all going to be useful to you when answering the question. Which of the diagrams, A to E, so it said A to E, so you need to make sure that you pay attention to that, because there might be, for all I know, an F over here, and that might not be relevant to the question if it's only asked for A to E, so make sure you pay attention to actually what the question is asking you for. Represents the electron arrangement of the following: a sodium atom and a sodium ion. Once again, make sure to read the question in full. If you just read a sodium for both of these questions without reading atom or ion, you could get the question completely wrong. You may find it helpful to use the information on the datasheet when answering this question. It's told you what to use. The nucleus of an aluminium atom are 13 protons and 14 neutrons. It's given you that. If it's giving you information, take the information to be correct. Don't try and work it out for yourself and waste time on it. Complete these sentences. The mass number of the aluminium atom is, in an atom of aluminium, there are blank electrons. Now, let's take a quick look at the marks. This is something that you should do on every question. It's asked you to complete these sentences, and it's worth 2 marks. So the fact that it's worth 2 marks, you need to do 2 things. The things that you need to do in this case is complete that sentence and complete this sentence. But you must make sure if it's a 2-mark question that you do 2 things. That goes for a 3-mark question, a 4-mark question, a 5-mark question, a 6-mark question. You need to do the correct amount of work. So this next question will test that very well. Why is an aluminium atom why is it electrically neutral? You can see there I muddled up my words. That's why you need to read it again. If you don't necessarily get it the first time, make sure to read it again. So, it's worth 2 marks. Thus, you need to make 2 points. Okay, so that could be that you make 1 point and explain it, or you make 2 different points about why it's electrically neutral. But either way, you need to write 2 things, because it's asking you for 2 things through the marks implicitly. Complete the table for the element fluorine. Once again, our marks say 3. So if you haven't written 3 things in this table over here, in this spot, and this spot, then you can't get the maximum amount of marks. Once again, if you don't know the right answer, then just guess. The diagram represents an atom of beryllium. Use words from the box to label the diagram. It's told you use words from the box to label the diagram. So don't just pick random words out of your head and write it down. Use the ones in the box, because if you pick ones out of your head, they might not necessarily be what the exam board is looking for. And once again, you can lose marks for that. Once again, this is a 2-mark question, so you need to make 2 points. You need to list 2 things, here and here. If you don't list 2 things, then you will not get the mark either. Use crosses. It's told you to use crosses, so don't use circles or squiggles or shading or anything else. It said use crosses. To complete the diagram to show the electronic structure of a magnesium atom, and then it's told you some information. Assume that information is true. Now it's asked you for 2 things, and you've got 3 shells. So the important thing that it's looking for here is the outside electrons and the inside electrons. You get 1 mark for the outside electrons and 1 mark for the inside electrons. Because if you know that both of the inside electrons are full, then you can make an assumption. Well, if you see that there are 3 shells, you can make an assumption that 2 of them are going to be filled. That's why it's only 2 marks and not 3 marks. Choose words from the list. Once again, choose words from the list. We've got a lovely list here. If you don't use the words from the list, you will not get the mark. And then it's 3 marks, and you've got 3 gaps to fill. This gap is slightly longer. Sometimes exams will do that. Now, sometimes it can mean that your answer will be longer, but most of the time it just means that, as you can see, it would go here, but there isn't space, so they've put it on the next line, and so it's just a bit larger. You can see that they've done the same method here and here. They've just made it larger to fill out an entire line, so it doesn't always mean something if they're giving you more space. Right, this question, without even reading this question, let's not even read that. 2 marks, 2 things. Okay, we know that. Let's come back to the question. Now it's given you 2 isotopes. It's asking for 2 isotopes, which means you've got 2 isotopes in this table. Now it said complete the table of information. Okay, so obviously it's going to be here and here, just as we assumed based on the marks. But based on the marks, you need to write 2 things and not just don't put anything. Right, again, we have a diagram. You will need to use this diagram. It's asking you what is represented by this and what's represented by this. So naturally, you will need to look at the key. If there's a key provided, it's most probably important to the question. Once again, it's 2 marks. We need to make 2 points, and as you can see, there are 2 lines. Let's take a look at the next question. What is the symbol for lithium? Okay, that's a 1 mark question. It's not looking for anything special, it's looking for a single thing. Right, now let's scroll down until we find some more complicated questions like this. This is a 6 mark question. Now when you see a 6 mark question and you see all of these lines just here, don't be scared by that. You can use the marks to your advantage once again. Use your own knowledge. It said use your own knowledge. You need to use your own knowledge. There are some things the data in the table above, which is the other bit of information, won't tell you. That's an assumption. And it's also giving you information at the top. In the periodic table, transition elements and group 1 elements are metals. So it's told you that they are metals. That is true. You must take what the exam tells you to be true. Some of the properties. That's where use your own knowledge comes in. It says use your own knowledge and it's got some of the properties. You can probably link the two together. So now let's see. It says to compare the chemical and physical properties of transition elements and group 1 elements. So judging by the amount of marks you've got here, it's looking for 3 points. And they need to be explained. So it's all well and good you just writing 3 points. That was rubbish. Why did that not work? It's all well and good you writing 3 points, but you need to actually provide the explanation to get all 6 of those marks. If you don't do that, then you can lack marks because you need to explain why you've said that. Again, that's the assumption you can make from the marks. The data doesn't, the question, doesn't explicitly tell you how much to include, but the marks always do. You need to think like an examiner when you write the question. What is the examiner expecting, judging by the number of marks that are available? Let's see if there's any different types of question in here. This is quite a good one. We've got a nice diagram up here. An airship filled with hydrogen or helium. Tick the property. It's said tick. So you're not going to cross the box or squiggle in the box or put a circle in the box or draw a square or a triangle. You're expected to tick the box. And once again, if you tick across multiple boxes, that doesn't count. So unless it's this top box just here, you must make sure to keep your ticks quite visibly inside the box. Hydrogen is no longer used in airships because it burns in oxygen. It's telling you something about what you're going to need to do. The chemical equation for this reaction is shown. So they've given you a chemical equation. Chances are you're going to need to use that. Complete the word equation for this reaction. Yes, you are. So you need to fill in this gap here with this thing here. Now we've already had one of these questions before, so just circle an answer, which is what we're going to need to do. So there are loads and loads of questions that you can do. Now let's see a different example of an exam question. Let's see some different examples. So this is a good website to get exams. So this is, if you look in the classwork tab, I'll just show you how to get some of them, and go to revision tips, online revision services. You can see there's loads of ones listed here, and the link for Maths Made Easy, which is just down here, is a really useful website to use for exam papers. So let's go to science, and we want physics, because that's what I'm aiming for next. We want exam questions by topic. Okay, let's see what we have. Let's go for electricity, current and potential difference. So, let's see, what do we have? An electrical circuit is shown in the figure below. This electrical circuit is going to be really important. What is meant by direct current? So it's asking you what is meant by something. So you're going to need to check one of these boxes just here, and it's asked you to tick it once again, so you put a lovely tick in whichever box it is. Now, this next question is one that you haven't come across before. The equation which links current, potential difference and resistance is this equation just here. They've given you an equation. Calculate the potential difference. Ask you to calculate potential difference across the battery. And it's 3 marks. So what are you going to need to do? Find or list 3 things. You're going to need to do 3 things. So it's asked, find the potential difference across the battery, that's this component just here, in the figure above. So we need current, current is measured in amps, that's going to be this, and resistance, that's going to be that. So you need to know a couple of rules to answer this question. That's why it's a 3-mark question and not a 2-mark question. First thing, you need to add these together, I do believe, and that gives you 30 ohms. And so now you have 30 times 0.4, which is going to give you an answer of 120,000. So your potential difference is 120,000. But can you see, I've done 3 things. I've done this up here, I've done an equation down here, and I've also got this value just here. That's our 3 things completed. If you haven't done 3 things in your question, you are not going to get all of the marks that are available. Right, let's take a look at another physics question. This is another one. As you can see in this example, it's only worth 2 marks, and we've once again been given an equation. Calculate the power output of the battery in the figure above. Give your answer to one significant figure. That means that your answer is going to be more than one significant figure, but you are going to need to simplify it. That's probably where this second mark comes in. Calculate the power output of the battery. And you've got potential difference, so you can make the assumption that that is going to be this. And you just need to use the current. So 0.4 times 120,000 gives you an answer of 4,800. But it's set to one significant figure. So your answer is going to be 5,000 watts. Because it's asked for one significant figure, and once again I did 2 things. Okay, you've been given some circuit symbols here, so you need to draw a circuit, and this is the gap that you need to draw a circuit in. It's got 2 marks, so I'm assuming you need to do at least 2 things. Yeah. Describe how the student could use a circuit to investigate how the current for a filament lamp affects its resistance. That's worth 4 marks, so you can once again make the assumption that you need to list 4 things or list 2 things and explain why. It's asked for describe, so you need to make 2 points and explain why in this example. Students' results are shown in figure 1. Lovely, we've got a graph. Describe how the resistance changes as the current for it increases. This is only worth 1 mark, so you need to write 1 short sentence. Don't overcomplicate it, it's only a 1 mark question, so you are not going to need to write loads and loads of information. You need to just describe one thing, how the resistance of the filament lamp changes as the current for it increases. So in this case it would just be it increases. You don't need to state any sort of trends in the graph. You don't need to say that it's directly proportional or anything like that. You just need to say that it increases. Once again, this is a 1 mark question. You need to do one thing. These are things that you should be looking for. That's your exam technique. How to look at questions. So let's look for another nice question to use. This is a nice question. 5 marks. The charge that flows through the new shower in 300 seconds is 1,800 coulombs. The new electric shower has a power of 138 kilowatts. Calculate the resistance of the heating element. Write down any equations that you use. So how many things have we got? We've got one thing here. We've got a calculation here. We've got this in kilowatts to do. That's another thing which needs simplifying. And we're going to need to, once again, change the equation. So we're going to need to rearrange it to get resistance, and that's worth 5 marks, so there must once again be another thing to do. Let's take a look. Kilowatts, so resistance of the heating element. Chances are I don't actually know where the 5th mark would come from in this question without doing it, but I'm sure there is a 5th mark somewhere in there. But we won't worry about that for the moment because we aren't answering the question. 2 mark question. Use your answer to part 3. You're going to need the answer that you got up here. Calculate the potential difference. You're going to need to write out the equation, that's 1 mark. And then answer the equation, and that's 2 marks. And I do believe that pretty much covers every scenario which you will get. So there's a little bit of blank space at the end, which there is. Let's use this. Always remember to bug the question. Now, even if you do this in your head, it's absolutely fine because you're still using it. You want to box your command words. Underline. Any keywords. And glance at the marks. Because the marks tell you what you need to do for the question, underlining the key words that are important to the question, so that includes any figures or any phrases, so calculate power for instance, and box a command word, so a command word could be what or describe or how or explain. And it's understanding what those words mean that determines exactly how you're going to answer that question. So if it's a describe question, you're going to need to make a point and then explain. So you're going to need to use a PE system, so point and then explain. Sometimes you'll use a PE system, so if you can't find as many points, then you can use evidence to back up that point, and that will gain you an extra mark once you explain it as well. So that's for describing. And then what, that's a very simple one. That's normally a 1 mark question. It's asking you to literally state one thing. How, that's an explain question. That's directly linked to this one just here. So you're going to need to make a point and explain using that PE system once again. It's a really important structure that you can use when answering quite a lot of questions. And it's pretty much key to any long answer assessments. Now there's different techniques that you can use for different papers. So far I've gone through science and maths as a general approach, but there are different ways to answer different questions. So I'm hoping to do another video soon covering covering the English questions that you may get. So for instance, how to answer question 3 of your language paper 1 or something like that. So there'll be another video hopefully out about that very soon. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it's been very insightful, as much as it is quite long. So thank you.